A new product overview video for the new Legacy 482 L-2a Mohawks. These locomotives are available in a undecorated pilot model under product number 6-11410, and also separate sale New York Central cab number 2791 as product number 6-11411. The model we have here is the locomotive that comes in the 6-29364 New York Central water level set. Out of the package, you will receive the engine memory module instruction manual, the instruction manual for the locomotive, 2 replacement traction tires, the non-operational front O-gauge coupler to allow multiple unit consisting, the engine memory module, which is specific to the road name and road number of the locomotive, smoke fluid funnel, and the smoke fluid pipette. These locomotives feature a die-cast boiler, die-cast frame, die-cast pilot and trailing truck, die-cast tender trucks, and die-cast tender shell. It has a single motor, a fan-driven smoke unit, Legacy rail sounds, and Legacy speed control, as well as directional LED lighting and an operating coil coupler on the rear of the tender. The switches on the Mohawk are located underneath the cab of the locomotive. We must flip the locomotive upside down to access these switches. Under the engineer side of the locomotive, we find the program run switch. This is used for assigning the locomotive ID number. Place the switch in the program position to assign the ID number using either a TMCC or Legacy remote. Then place the switch back in the run position to operate the locomotive. The engine will retain that ID number until you change it again in the future. For conventional operators, the program position is used for the E-unit lockout, keeping the locomotive running in one direction at all times. The run position will allow you to access all 3 directional states. The next switch we have is the Odyssey on-off switch. This controls the Odyssey 2 speed control system, which is responsible for maintaining a constant speed regardless of track conditions or load. In the ODY position, the Odyssey 2 speed control is enabled. In the no ODY position, the speed control is disabled. We recommend that you leave the switch in the ODY position for single engine operation. The other remaining switch we have on the fireman's side of the locomotive is the smoke on-off switch. In the no SMK position, the smoke is disabled and cannot be controlled from either the Legacy or TMCC remote. For conventional operators, the no SMK position will keep the smoke unit turned off. The SMK position turns the smoke unit on for conventional operators, and for Legacy and TMCC operators allows you to control the smoke unit using the functions on the remote. The tender of our Mohawk does not have any switches on it, but it does have a manual volume adjustment. That volume pot is located just underneath the water hatch on the deck of the tender. Lift that water hatch up and the volume pot is right there. This allows you to increase or decrease the overall volume of the sound system. Now, before we place this locomotive on the track, we want to be sure to perform some preventive maintenance. This preventive maintenance will prevent the locomotive from making any unnecessary squeaks or squeals upon the initial break-in period. To do this, we're going to use an oil bottle with a needle applicator and apply a small drop of oil to the axle where it goes through the bearing block on each axle on the frame. Just a small drop is all that's required, and you want to do this to each axle on each side of the truck frame. It's also a good idea to apply a small drop of oil to the axle on the trailing truck where it goes into the bearing. Now, even though we have a steel axle and a Delrin bearing, it's a good idea to keep that lubricated. We want to perform the same steps on the pilot truck where the axle goes through the die cast of the truck itself. Small drop is all that's needed. You can work that in with your finger. We also want to place a drop of oil on the axle for the collector on either side and work that in, and repeat that step for the remaining collectors. Because this locomotive is equipped with all of this linkage, it's also a really good idea to apply a small drop of oil between the side rod screw and the side rod itself. Perform this on both sides of the frame, on all of the side rod screws. When you come to the eccentric crank, you want to put a small drop of oil between the main rod spacer and the main rod, and then also the main rod spacer and the side rod. You can work this in by rotating the wheels around, and then repeat the steps for the other side. We do not recommend that you apply oil to the crosshead or the crosshead guide. Much like the locomotive, we want to perform our same preventive maintenance steps to the tender. Using our oil applicator, we want to place a small drop of oil on the axle where it goes into the bronze bearing on the side frame. A small drop of oil is all that's necessary, and this will prevent any unwanted squeals from appearing during the break-in period. You can work that in with your finger. You want to do that to both sides of each axle on each truck. It's also a good idea to put that small drop of oil on the axle for the collector and work that in with your finger, and perform the same step on the rear collector. Before we get our Legacy Mohawk on the track, we first need to tell our Legacy remote about that locomotive. Since the cab number is 2797, using our numbering convention of the last two digits of the cab number, we're going to assign this locomotive as engine 97. So on our remote, we press engine 97. We then locate the orange memory module that came with the locomotive. Insert this memory module on the top of the remote with the silver circle L facing up. Press the info key in the upper right hand corner. This will open up the engine menu screen. We want to press the button underneath load. It tells us a module is inserted. It's a New York Central product number 11412 Mohawk number 2797, and it asks us if we want to load the engine data. Press the button under yes. The data is now loaded, and we have to remove the module to continue. So remove the module. I'd like to take just a moment and show you what this has done for us. It's already assigned our name and our road number. By pressing the scroll button in the upper left hand corner, we go to the next tab, which is type. It has set our type to steam. Pressing scroll again, it's set our control tab to legacy mode. Pressing scroll again, it's set our sounds to legacy rail sounds. To exit the engine menu screen, simply press the info button in the upper right hand corner. You'll notice the road number appears momentarily, and across the top of our screen is scrolling New York Central Mohawk. The engine memory module has loaded some icons on the touchpad for us. Let's take a moment and review those. We have the following icons available: volume up, crew talk, steam let off, volume down. The black circle is shutdown. Pressing this key when the locomotive is at idle will activate the shutdown sequence. If we get the locomotive moving, that icon changes to a black triangle. Pressing the triangle when the locomotive is underway will activate the emergency stop dialog. Stopping the locomotive will turn that icon back into a circle. We have the steam blowdown, tower calm, smoke off, smoke on, tender marker lamps on, tender marker lamps off, engine reset, Rule 17 lighting enabled, and Rule 17 lighting off. By pressing the speed bar on the bottom of our remote, the icons on the touchpad change. We have our 6 preset railroad speeds, tower calm, smoke off, smoke on. We have a bar graph that is directly representative of the amount of labor the sounds will make in pulling a load. By pressing the effects up button, that bar graph will raise, and across the top of our display screen it says labor increase. Pressing the down arrow key will display labor decrease at the top of the screen, and the bar graph will lower. The 1 inside a circle is for roll speed. Roll speed is the very first speed that the locomotive will achieve and maintain regardless of track condition or load. To get back to the original icons on the touchpad, simply press the aux1 key and the original icons return. Now before we get our legacy Mohawk underway, there's two things we need to do first. The first is we need to prime the smoke unit, and secondly we need to assign the engine ID number. To prime the smoke unit, we're going to use some 6-37841 Lionel Premium Smoke Fluid. Using the pipette that came with the locomotive, we're going to fill it up about 3/4 of the way from the tip to the very first line. Insert that pipette in the smoke unit and put the fluid in. A couple puffs of air to make sure we remove any possible meniscus from that stack. And secondly, we need to program the ID number. As we mentioned earlier in the video, the switches for this locomotive are located underneath the cab. So we'll have to remove the locomotive from the track to place the program run switch in the program position. Place the locomotive back on the track, connected to the tender, because we're going to need the echo of the sound system to confirm that it's taken the command. Go ahead and apply track power. You'll notice that when you first power up, nothing on the locomotive is illuminated at all, and this is normal. So using our legacy remote, we've already told the remote that engine 97 is going to be this Mohawk, so we press engine 97 and set. That whistle confirms that it's taken the command. We go ahead and turn the power off, remove the locomotive from the track, and place the program run switch back in the run position. Now you want to make sure that the Odyssey on-off switch is in the ODY or Odyssey enabled position. Make sure the smoke on-off switch is in the SMK position, so smoke is on, and program run is in the run position. We can apply power again. Once again, nothing on the locomotive is illuminated when power is first applied, and this is normal. So now on our remote we're going to press engine 97. We're going to press and hold this power icon in the lower left hand corner of the touchpad, and we'll get this dialog for startup.
This is the dispatcher. Do you copy?
Roger that. I read you. Over.
Okay, start her up. Stand by for track orders.
Copy that. Ready to start this trip. Out.
Now, as soon as you address the locomotive, the classification lamps in the front of the locomotive illuminate, the headlight illuminates, the cab light illuminates, and the marker lights on the rear of the tender illuminate. I'm going to go ahead and turn the smoke unit on. As the locomotive sits at idle, it will begin to produce smoke. The amount of smoke it produces sitting at idle is not that great. Initially at power up it's high, and then it backs off a little bit, and this is normal. So the whistle on these locomotives is fantastic. Give a listen to this. And that's a quillable whistle. Fantastic. The bell. The two of them together. Go ahead and play the crew talk.
Tower. Air test complete. Am I clear? Over.
Negative. Stand by. Over.
Tower comm.
Dispatcher here. You're cleared outbound. Over.
Clear to move. Thank you, sir. Out.
And we'll go ahead and get this engine underway. Adjust that effects button underneath the speed bar, raise and lower the laboring of the chuffing. So we're going to go ahead and lower that laboring so you can hear the effect of that. Now I can bring that laboring back up manually as well. Go ahead and apply the brakes. Pretty fantastic sound system all the way around. Now this locomotive is also equipped with sequence control, which is a series of sounds that play based upon throttle responses. So to enter sequence control, you simply press and hold the aux1 or the straight arrow key for 3 seconds. The locomotive will tell you it's entered sequence control mode by hitting 2 bells and a whistle, and it sounds like this. The train is now in sequence control mode. It's important to note that the very first speed step does not actually send the locomotive moving, but rather gears all the sounds up getting ready to move, and then speed step 2 is the first speed step.
Cleared outbound. Over.
Copy that. Out.
So that's speed step 1. And this is speed step 2.
Dispatcher, we're moving. Over.
Affirmative. Keep rolling. Out.
Now the bell will stay on until we crest speed step 23. You can turn it off manually or let it play. Once we get above speed step 23, that bell will turn off. So let's go ahead and ramp this up a bit, get beyond this bell. Now any sudden changes to the throttle will garner a response from the locomotive. So we're going to go ahead and turn the throttle up quickly, get the locomotive really cooking. As I slow the locomotive down and get to speed step 24 and then crest into 23, the bell will turn on automatically. And when I slow down and stop, I'll get this dialogue.
We're at a complete stop. Out.
So now to exit sequence control mode, I simply press aux1 or the straight arrow key and hit the reset button on the touchpad. The whistle confirms that we've left sequence control mode. Now if I want to add coal to my coal bunker, I can press and hold the reset key on the touchpad for an extended period of time and I'll get these sounds. When I release R or reset, I'll get this dialogue.
The coal's full. Over.
Acknowledged. Out.
And if I press and hold the steam release icon on my touchpad, I can add water to my water tank. When I release this icon, I'll get this dialogue.
My water's full.
Copy that. Out.
Okay, now that the locomotive is at idle, I can go ahead and play the shutdown sounds. And I can activate those by pressing that black circle in the center of my touchpad. And this is the dialogue I'll get.
Going to sign the register book. Thanks, dispatcher. Now.
Now once my locomotive completes the shutdown sequence, it's effectively back to the position where it was when I first applied power, where all of the lights on the locomotive are off, including the smoke unit and the sound system. And the locomotive will stay this way until I address it again, bring it back up, and then I can operate the locomotive normally.